Hello, everybody, and welcome back to one of our fabulous Sunday afternoon panels. And we are so glad that you're hanging out with us today, and I hope you're having as good a time as we are. Our next panel is the intersection of danger and passion, and we've got a couple more after that, which culminates in the art of publishing this evening. So we hope you will join us. So, moderator Jane Fletcher, over to you.
Good afternoon, everybody. This is going to be a wonderful panel, I'm sure. We've got some amazing panelists here. I'm going to start by introducing panelists one at a time and throw each of them the same question in turn. What draws you to writing this mix of genres? How do you compare it to writing pure romance? That's if you do write pure romances. And are you ever tempted to drop the romance bit and write a pure thriller? So that is my question, and I'm starting off with Radclyffe, who I will introduce.
That's three.
Radclyffe has written over 60 romances, including contemporary, paranormal and romantic intrigue, as well as having edited numerous romance, erotica and fantasy anthologies. She's also the publisher of Bold Strokes books. So why do you write the combination of romance and passion?
Thanks, Jane.
Danger and passion.
Thanks, and good morning, everyone. Well, the short answer is it was an accident, because I didn't really think about I was actually doing that. I was just writing a story that I wanted to write, and that was Above All Honor. And I had written probably 5 what we would now call contemporary romances prior to that. The primary thing for me is that I'm writing romance. So to answer your last part of the question first, no, I don't think I would be a pure intrigue writer. For me, writing the characters and the romance arc is the most, well, at least a key part of the story. I like writing intrigue because it allows me to have 2 plot lines that help each other. And I think contemporary romances are almost entirely character driven, whereas if you're writing an intrigue plot as well, you've got 2 lines, so you've got more plot events working together. So it feels a little more difficult integrating them, but it feels like you've got a lot of material to work with. So I like that aspect of writing romantic intrigue, and I like girls with guns.
Okay, so next, Robyn Nicks. Robyn lives in England but enjoys travelling all over the world in search of inspiration. She loves to create complex characters that weave into stories that remind us of the darker side of human nature, in the hope we might cultivate the light. And again, what draws you to writing combination of danger and passion?
I think it's probably because when things have settled after the danger is when you feel most alive and most able to kind of grasp and take hold of what life actually has to offer you. So I think by combining the danger and the romance and the passion, it's even more fiery than just, say, a pure romance that's running on, as Rad says, character-driven stuff, people in bakeries and, all that sort of normal kind of day-to-day life. Injecting that danger into it ups the stakes and the investment in the passion and the romance.
Okay, thank you. Carsen Taite. Award-winning author and recovering criminal defence attorney, Carsen Taite likes twisty thrillers, sweet romances, and binge-watching scripted TV. Her sense of adventure is fueled by deadlines, and she's constantly in suspense, since she usually has no idea how her books will end until she writes the final chapter. Carsen's latest novel, Drawn, is a romance wrapped in a murder mystery, and it's available for early release in the BSB web store. So why do you write the combination of danger and passion?
Well, I haven't been able to think of anything else since Robyn said bakeries, but I love a good bakery story, but I also love danger. Part of writing romantic suspense for me is being able to take some of what I experienced in my work and strip out all the boring bits and just write the fun suspense parts. But incorporating the romance gives an added risk element to the story, because when you have 2 people who are trying to fall in love in the midst of this, and usually there's some internal conflict that's keeping them apart that's related to the plot and the intrigue, it just really elevates it for me, and it makes it easier in a way. It's like Rad said, you have a lot more to work with, but it also gives you a lot more suspense elements to work with in terms of adding the romance to the danger.
Okay. Next, Vali. Vali is the author of the Devil series, the Forces series, and the Call series. She's written numerous standalones, the newest being Face the Music, has the novella On the Rocks in her new collection, Still Not Over You. So, Ali, why do you write a mixture of romance and passion? Danger.
Like Rad, I also write standalone romances, but as much as I enjoy those, I also enjoy finding new and numerous ways to kill people. Yeah. I just finished the new Devil, so we'll find some new and interesting ways to kill people in that one. But to me, I think it's because there's, I guess, a way to find, especially in the Kane Casey character, that just because you're supposed to view her as someone who really you're not supposed to be rooting for, that even a person like that who can kill someone on the order of just snapping her fingers, that doesn't mean that they don't have a vulnerable side. So you could be a psychopath but still have feelings. And not that I think Kane is a psychopath, but I think you could also bring forward in those kind of action-packed killer thriller kind of books that person is not one-faceted, that they have many facets, and that you can fall in love with that one character where you're really supposed to be rooting for the other side. So I find those much more fun to write, for me anyway. It's a good way to blow off steam.
Okay then. And finally, Ileandra Young. Ileandra Young is one face of The Shaded Brain, who also writes erotica and romance as Raven Shadowhawk. Awesome name. This face writes urban and traditional fantasy and has a real obsession with vampires and would pick a sword over a gun any day. When not writing, Ileandra can be found LARPing, I assume that's legal, crocheting, or playing Minecraft with her twin sons. So, why mix danger with passion?
Right, first things first, I feel like I need to explain LARPing to everyone at some point because everyone keeps asking. But yeah, danger and passion, it's not something I usually do, actually. It kind of happened by accident to see if I could. I mean, like my bio said, I do romance, but I kind of separate it completely from my fantasy stuff. So this is the first time I've kind of mixed it up to see if I could. Because usually I'm writing about vampires eating people. There isn't really space for romance in there. So this is against the grain for me. So I'm not quite sure how easy this is to answer, actually. It was a test drive to see if I could do it, frankly, and it seems I can, and it seems that it works, and it seems that I've added a layer to the characters I've been writing about that wouldn't necessarily have been there otherwise. It's like you guys have already said, it's showing different sides and, a multifaceted character. And I'm starting to think now that if I hadn't written at least a tiny bit of romance into both Rays and Moon Fever, that the character would have lost something, or she would have been less relatable. Because Danica, as a character, she can be quite abrasive. And she's very keyed into her job, and it can get a bit boring, actually, if this one character that you're following, because it is just one point of view, is just very centered on one thing. So she has these distractions every now and then in falling for someone she's not meant to fall for. And it just gives the story a bit of interest, to be honest. So I'm glad I did it.
I'm starting to get questions coming in from people listening, so I'm going to go to those first. And I'll start back with Rad, asking a question here from Chantel Jones. If you were to organise a library, would you put your books in the LBQT section or with the other mainstream genres?
Ooh. Okay. My primary goal is to get my books to everybody's books to the readers who want them. And that means they have to be visible and they have to be able to find them. Would I love to have all of our books single filed under genre because we write romances and they're romances and mysteries and they're mysteries, I would. But I think the problem is, given the volume of other titles that you're going to see in those sections, it may be difficult for our readers to find them. So it doesn't upset me if they're labeled LGBTQ in a library or in a collection, because I want readers to be able to find them. I would love for our books to be double shelved so that we had a copy in mystery and a copy in LGBTQ. Unfortunately, that's a cost factor. But I think what really matters is that we reach the audience, and however we can best do that is the way that I want to see it done. And I think today we still need to be able to see our books as LGBTQ categorized. And that's basically how they go out to booksellers and librarians in that way.
Next question, I think I'll give to Ali, because you've written various books. Which character have you written who you have the most passion for, and who is the most dangerous? And might they be the same, of course?
They are the same. A long time ago, when I first turned in a manuscript, it was actually Carly Sound was the one I wrote first. The one that actually came out first was the first Cain Casey novel, the first Devil's book. And I really thought it was going to be 2 books and we were done. I actually turned it in as 1 book, and Rad told me I couldn't have an 800-page book. I don't know why, but I keep trying. But Cain Casey is somebody that I wrote because to me, I hadn't found anyone like that in lesbian fiction. I wrote it for myself. I enjoy the genre. The Godfather is my favorite movie. So, and I thought when I wrote it, the people that I let read it, they said, no one would enjoy something with that much graphic violence in it. And so I just finished the 7th book in the series, actually the 8th. So obviously that is not true. But Cain has become a very important character to me. She continues to change. She continues to evolve. And she's someone that I'm still finding new and kind of great ways to expand on her character and the world that she lives in. So,
next question from Morgan Fracknell that I'll give to Robyn. How do you decide how much danger, death, and mayhem to include to challenge, but still meet readers' expectations and sensibilities?
I suppose it's what the story needs. I don't ever put, I am kind of quite well known for, well, not well known, but I am known for the violence and explicit violence that I put in my books. Where I would say is where I put it is so it's not gratuitous. The story needs it, the character needs it. So if you're talking about a drug gang that you've crossed, they're not just going to slap you on the wrist. What they do in retribution is probably going to be quite nasty. And it's about deciding what the reader actually needs to see and what can be faded to black. And that can be, quite a balance. And it's something that I struggle with on every book when I've got the passion and the danger intersection.
Okay. Next question from Kelly McNair. She gave it to both Carsen and Ali, but Ali's already had the question. So Carsen, you love fountain pens. Do you write either your notes or your manuscripts longhand? And what pen is currently on your desk?
Well, Ali has a great pen on her desk right now.
Yeah. Yes, no, I just bought the Visconti Homosapien Pen. So it's made from lava from Mount Etna.
Ooh.
Yeah. So, and I do write mine longhand, so. Boy, they
Well,
take
well, hi, Carrie. I've just got an everyday carry on my desk right now. It's a Kaweco All Sport. It's the stonewashed denim in black. And it's a fun little pen. I like that you can post it and make it regular size, but it's also mini, so it just slips in my pocket. I don't write my manuscripts longhand like Ali, but I do keep a notebook for every book, and I keep my notes in there, and I write all those longhand. So.
And I've left all my pens to Carsen in my will.
I know. I'm very excited about that.
Okay. From Olga, and a question I'll give it to Ileandra. Would you follow Hemingway's advice? Write drunk, edit sober.
Can't I just write drunk, edit drunk, be drunk, and drunk? No, I actually, I wouldn't take it as advice necessarily, but I like the thought behind it, you know. So when I write a first draft, it really is, I call it brain vomit. It's just bleh, straight onto the page. And when I come back to editing it afterwards, I've got a much clearer, cleaner head on. I mean, I do outline everything to within an inch of its life, but there's still some creative leeway when I'm writing, and there is a lot of freedom there. I do write with cider very often, and I get quite upset if the cider is gone, but I don't drink enough to be drunk. And if I'm editing, I actually need it more then, to be honest, because editing is hard. So I think he's got it backwards.
That was my thought as well, actually, when I was reading the question.
It's the wrong way round. No, I think I'm a bit more sophisticated when I'm editing. I might have a glass of wine instead of a bottle of cider, maybe, and a very hefty supply of chocolate. There's nothing in there about chocolate, and there really should be. Oh, and tea. Gotta have tea. I am that British. All the tea.
Okay, a question from Nikita to Radclyffe. Which is the book in which you've had to invest the most work due to the difficulty, and the one that has taken you the longest to write?
One of the most recent ones was Cost of Honor, and that one was tough because there's 2 to 3 separate storylines that take place geographically in different places at the same time. So temporarily they were occurring concurrently, and I had to mix them all together and hopefully keep the reader straight. So and that's one of the romantic intrigues that I've written. So I would say that one. What took me the longest to write, I think, was probably one of the first Midnight Hunters, because it's really long. It ended up being in the 80,000s, and I don't usually write that much. So I think The Midnight Hunt was probably one of the longest books I've written.
I'll throw the next question to Carsen. It's from an anonymous attendee. What's the most dangerous situation you've put your characters in?
Well, that's a very good question. I mean, I think I'm just going to be broad and say that I think any situation where you might lose your liberty is a pretty dangerous situation. So I'm just going to say most of my books where someone's in danger of going to prison.
Okay. The next question is actually very similar to one that I put up, so I'm going to throw it to each one of you again in turn. It said, the question is, I love passion much more than danger. How do you achieve a good balance between both? Which again was a question that I think I'd intended to throw at you anyway. How do you balance the passion and the danger so that one doesn't override the other? And we can start with Robyn.
I'd kind of answered that in my previous answer about making sure that it doesn't, that the violence and the danger doesn't overcome the romance. I don't know as it's a conscious decision as such. I'm conscious about the effect of the violence and the peril that I'm putting my characters in, but it's got to be realistic and not gratuitous. And I think whether or not that overcomes the passion, I don't think it does. It's not something I pay attention to. I think it takes care of itself.
Ileandra?
I don't think I do have a balance because primarily what I'm writing is about the action and what's happening in that space. The romance, it's there, but it isn't at all the focus. It kind of happens on the side. So if there's a balance, it's skewed heavily one way. But I'm okay with that because that's what I'm writing. If I was writing a romance, then of course the balance would be different and the weighting would be different is what I mean, because it wouldn't be a balance, it would be exactly that. But yeah, my books aren't balanced. The romance is there, kind of, sort of, but it's mostly about catching bad guys, shooting them, using swords, all that kind of thing.
Carsen?
Well, I mean, it is a delicate balance, and I face this problem a lot in my books because I have characters set up to where the conflict, the external conflict, keeps them apart in a way that makes it hard to bring them back together in a romantic situation. So, you know, a witness and a suspect and a police officer, you know, that's not it's difficult to get them together in a way that doesn't override the conflict of the plot. So it is a delicate balance. And I just think you have to find some reason that these two people are meant to be together, to find that romantic passion that can override any obstacles the outside world brings in.
Ali?
I don't really plan anything. As far as when I start, I just start writing, and I can't think and type at the same time, so that isn't why I write them in longhand. But to me, I think mine is probably skewed more toward not so much the passionate side of it when I'm writing those kinds of books, but I think that especially in a series as long, and probably Rad will agree with this, when you write a series that goes over like the 3 or 4 book mark, people expect certain things from the characters, and then to change kind of midstream, I guess, would be to kind of not do justice to those characters. So I don't really balance it, but I think in that series it works, and I think it's not skewed so much toward the passionate side, but more toward the violent intrigues side. Excuse me.
And Rad?
Well, I think there's a couple of things at work. I think, as Ileandra said, it really depends on what you're writing. And Robyn said the same thing. If you're writing an intrigue with romantic elements, you're going to have a lot more intrigue, and the romance is going to be kind of in the background. And it may not even come into the sort of consciousness of the characters until late in the book, or maybe not even very much at all. And that's where, because you're writing a book where the emphasis is on the elements of intrigue and danger and action. I personally write romantic intrigue, which to me means they're about 50-50. I mean, that is what I set out to write, a book that has a strong romance arc and a book that has an intrigue arc. I don't write a lot of graphic violence. I write a lot of suspense and a lot of danger. So I try to bring the romance and the intrigue elements along at the same pace for about the first 50 to 60%. I generally will culminate the romance arc a little bit before the intrigue arc ends, so the characters can be together, working or facing that danger at the same time. And then after that arc is done, they'll come back together at the very end to sort of reaffirm the romantic elements. So that's kind of how I work that.
Okay, I'll go on to Robyn about how much research goes into the various amounts of danger and violence. And are you ever concerned your government will catch on and get nervous? And this is from Adrian.
That's a great question, Adrian. Yeah, and I think all authors, and certainly the ones here, and particularly Ali, have to be careful about what's on their internet browser history, because I think if the CIA or FBI or whoever it is that's responsible for kind of looking at those things actually went into a deep dive into our history, they'd be very worried. Because we often have to figure out how to kill people, how to dispose of bodies, how to make bombs, how to bring planes down, all of these things that are going to be red flags for agencies. And I don't know if I'm an author, I'm just researching is going to be a good enough excuse for if I ever get pulled in for that. But in terms of research, a lot of it, so that it's realistic. And again, as I say, not gratuitous. So if I'm writing about the military air force and that kind of thing, and torture scenes with drug gangs. Then I've done a lot of reading around that, and not other fiction stuff, but non-fiction stuff. So I read a lot of sort of psychological things, like the FBI guy whose name is escaping me because I'm getting old and my brain and memory is just ridiculous at the moment. But there was the guy that was responsible for the start of the behavioral sciences department in the FBI, and I've read almost everything that he's written. I like to read the memoirs of killers as well, so I can get into their head. And like Ali said, it's about being multifaceted and multidimensional, and seeing if there is any humanness, I suppose, left in there, and how you explain the motivation for how that person has come to that place in their life to be doing these things, and if there's a kernel of an explanation, not an excuse, but certainly an explanation for where they are in their lives and how they've come to be there. But I think research is just super important in your books, no matter what you're writing, to ensure that your reader rather, gets a really realistic experience.
I'm going to go back to one of my questions. I'll probably throw it to everybody in turn if I feel like it. Carsen, how do you approach choreographing the action scenes, and how does it differ from choreographing sex scenes?
It's not different. No, I mean, I don't have Barbies like Barbara Ann Wright, but I do think it's important to try and get those movements and things right, and make sure that things are realistic. It's just like anything else, research-wise. You want to make sure that it's believable and realistic. And those kind of scenes where there's a lot of action going on, whether it's violence or whether it's passionate lovemaking, need to feel. You need a lot of feeling in those scenes, and that's the most important thing, I think, is to remember to insert those emotions in either aspect, because that's what brings the scene to life in both cases.
Ileandra?
I act them out as much as I can. I do actually mean that. I try and visualize. Basically, I'll write something, and if it sounds too cool, it's probably too cool and not something that humans can do. If I'm writing about vampires, not so much of a problem. But I'll kind of stand up and go through the motions. Can I do this punch? Can I do this kick? Can I... I wrote this when I was 14, I remember this. I had a character run at a wall, right, go up the wall, flip over and punch down through the floor of the room she was in into the room below. And it sounded awesome, not very realistic. And I thought, could I do that? I'm not as fit and limber as these characters are anyway, but it's not something I could do. So I apply it to a real body. And I'm lucky enough to have friends who do things like fencing and taekwondo and judo. And I'm like, hey, Tom, is this a thing that can happen? He'll go, no. Like, oh, could it happen if he was super strong? Maybe. And, and I kind of use that to help me out. With sex scenes, can't always act them out. It's a shame, really. But again, I have some very liberal friends who aren't afraid to tell me stories. I lean on the experiences of my friends and myself probably more than I should. But again, if it's something that has happened, then I can probably use that to help me choreograph something that might happen in a book.
Robyn.
Hello, what was the question? I've already answered it, haven't I?
How do you approach choreographing the action scenes, and how does it differ from choreographing the sex scenes?
Okay, I can't say anything like Ileandra's just said, otherwise I'll get battered by Bray when I go back upstairs.
We'll do for the violent scenes.
Much like Ileandra, it's about making sure your body can do those things and reactions. So if somebody's been shot in a certain place, can they still walk? Can they still, should they just be collapsed on the ground because they're losing so much blood? In terms of a fight scene, I do tend to very much visualize that and get up out of the chair and kind of act it out from both sides of it, just to make sure that it works. And I love writing action scenes and fight scenes. Don't know what that says about me. But yeah, so acting it out I think is really important, because it's easy to say, you know, things do this and things do that, and then she reacted this way and her body went this way, and but it can get confusing to read, because it's a lot easier to see that visually, but to actually describe a fight scene is quite a lot harder. So it's an interesting kind of thing to write, but I really enjoy doing that.
Ali?
I think it's kind of the same thing as a sex scene, because you still have to account for all the body parts. Like, you can't throw in an extra arm or a leg or anything like that. It's interesting, though, because you could Google things like what happens when you feed someone through a meat grinder, and they're
you're on the list.
Yeah, no, I must have a thick FBI file. The other thing that's really cool is when you write something and you wonder, like, you know, how long would it take someone to die, or could you die of this, or could you survive it, is I mean, I don't know if everybody who writes for Bold Strokes, but you have a great person that you could text is Rad. I mean, she was done that, and it's like, if you do this, would you die from this? It was right away, which is kind of cool. But to me, it's kind of the same. It's, you know, it's choreography is choreography, and you still have to count and kind of like what everybody else says, make sure that it's something that's realistic, unless you're writing fantasy, which in the Forces, you know, you have vampires and werewolves and everything. So you could take a little bit more liberty with that, but with something that's based in reality, you have to be realistic. So, but I think it's kind of the same.
And finally, Rad.
I'm coming down more on the side of what Carsen said earlier. I think in both the sex scenes and the action scenes, one of the most important thing is for the reader to be able to view it through the eyes of the character, to be able to feel their reactions, whether they're physical or emotional. And yes, it's really important to choreograph a scene physically, but I think probably that should be less rather than more, because honestly, I don't think that's as important to readers as the sensations they get from experiencing the action, whether it's fear or pain or passion, whatever it may be. I agree that you don't want to have your characters doing something that they can't do if they're human. It's great if you're writing paranormals, because vampires and wares can do just about anything. I do think if you're going to injure the characters, it's really important that you know the impact of that injury in terms of recovery. Like, can they go back to work the next day? Are they going to be in their squad car 2 days from now? Are they going to be laid up for 6 months? And that's what Ali will frequently shoot me an email and say, how quickly can they go back if I tear off one of their arms? So,
and she answers every time.
Question. Carsen, have you ever had to stop yourself or rein yourself in when the violence in a scene was getting too much, or if you're getting too graphic? And also the same question with romance scenes. Have you ever had to stop yourself?
I don't write a lot of violence. So that's, I mean, I leave that for Ali. She likes it so much. So that's not been an issue. The romance issue, I think you just have to find the right timing. You don't want to bring people together too soon. You don't want to bring them together too late. You just have to find the right time for the right act, the first kiss, the first touch, the first lovemaking. All of that has to just be the exact right pacing to keep the reader engaged in the story and believe that there's more to come, and know that when it's resolved, or when there's a happily ever after, that you've led them there with all the right trimmings up in advance. So.
I like the comments. They just put Alley Valley books and then Carsen Taite's less violent books.
Yeah, I see your meat grinder has got you a new reader there as well, Hallie, looking down the web chat.
Wait a second.
Okay. Actually, for Rad, about this, there's a question here about discussions on writing for specific templates. Are there specific templates you have to use, or is there more freedom? It's about templates and genre. Do authors find they have a standard template they use for all their books in this genre, or is there more freedom?
Okay, I think I'm gonna reinterpret the question, and you can tell me if it sounds like the question. And it sounds to me like the question is, do genres have specific templates? And the answer to that is no. Genre fiction has certain expectations that readers will look for. For example, if you're writing a mystery, it has to get solved at the end. If you're writing a romance, the characters have to end up together. If you're writing intrigue, for example, there should be something that creates a sense of danger. But how you get to that point is really dependent upon how the author writes, what the character goals are, what their motivations may be. Now, are there specific elements that you would want to see in a work of genre fiction? The answer is yes, absolutely. We tend to call them beats. There are romance beats, there are mystery beats, there are sci-fi beats, they are classic. You can find them in every work that really fits that genre, but it's not a template. It can, the first meet, for example, is a romance beat, and it's a very important scene. It's one that establishes the initial connection between the two characters who will go on to fall in love. Where that occurs, how that occurs, what they say, that's completely up to the author. That's where the freedom of writing genre fiction comes in. But if you leave out that scene, you're going to have a weak romance arc. So I hope that answers that question.
Yeah. I guess you'd have a good answer for that one. I'm going to come a question from me. I'm going to start with Ileandra. How do you create a credible sense of danger? How do you keep your readers on the edge of your seats? If things are getting too dangerous, how do you create a credible romance? And equally, how close can your characters get to the Grim Reaper and still have the urge to have urges?
The urge to have urges. Sometimes, I'm not sure I get that balance right at all, actually. I think, well, with the urge to have urges, I sometimes feel that when you've been through a harrowing event or a dangerous event, the relief one feels afterwards is enough that you need to kind of let off that tension in any way you possibly can. And that might be with a frantic kiss, it might be by punching at a punching bag, it might be going for a walk. There's all sorts of ways people use to let off that steam. So I kind of try to weave that in. Sorry, can you hear my kids? Because they're really loud.
There's a passionate murder happening in the other room.
It feels like it, and there's only two of them in there. Give me the first part of the question again. I want to make sure I actually answer rather than babble.
No, that's okay. Creating a credible sense of danger. It's a question pretty much of balance. If you've got to have the danger, they've got to feel it. But equally, there's a whole thing of people being chased by zombies and stopping in the middle of the field to have sex, which is implausible. And it's balancing those two and getting them both believable.
Yeah, it depends as well on what the danger is, because there's different types of danger, isn't there? I mean, one of the most dangerous scenes in my mind for Danica in both ways was when she had to talk to her mother, when she finally said to her mother, no, I like women and you need to accept this. For me, I feel that was an incredibly dangerous thing for her to do because of the type of person that her mother is. Whereas in the scene, maybe 2 or 3 pages before that, a vampire tried to eat her face, but that's just par for the course for her. That's her job. So yes, it's dangerous, but it's not dangerous to her as a person, if that makes sense. For someone like Danica, who is, one of her core values is family, she runs the risk of losing her mother by having this conversation, but she has to have this conversation. So there's that kind of danger. And I guess after that, going off and having a cuddle with her girlfriend might be a nice way to do that. So that balances out quite nicely. Whereas one scene I did question for myself, but I found it was actually quite nice in the end, was they're hiding from someone in an office and they do share a sneaky kiss. And it was the tension of the moment. They had been building up to this moment pretty much from when they met right up to here. And the tension of, we're going to get caught if we don't move, but we can't move. And in order to hide, we need to get pretty close because there was only a very small place for them to hide in. Tension builds, tension bubbles, one kiss. But we're not going to go further than that because actually, if they get caught, they're in big, big trouble. So it's a balance kind of thing, just like with everything else, to be honest. And it's kind of finding what side of the line you fall on and then following along that path.
Anybody else like to say anything on the subject of balancing passion and danger? Wave your hand if so.
I just poke in for a quick second because this question comes up all the time in relationship to romantic intrigue and romantic suspense. Like, well, you know, how could they possibly have any romantic feelings when somebody's shooting at them? And the answer is they don't. I mean, nobody thinks about sex when somebody's shooting at you. But usually in these books, there are going to be moments after the event or before the event where the intensity of what's happening heightens their emotions. And that allows you, when you're writing romantic intrigue, to sometimes condense the romance arc so that you can get them together quickly. Because in fact, when your life is in danger, life becomes so much more critical and so much more acute. So there's that element at work too. So, and I agree with Ileandra, there are lots of different forms of danger and tension, and you can have that in a romance where nobody's shooting at you.
Next question. I'm not sure, which of your danger-filled passions have you had the most fun writing? Can I start with Robyn? And what was it about the book? Was it the plot, the characters, or particular scenes that you liked? So which of your books was the most fun to write?
In terms of the danger, probably the Extractor series. So I'm cheating there because that's 3 books, but it's a true trilogy in that the arc and the danger through for all the characters and in fact the world runs through the whole set. But I had a lot of fun writing that. Figuring it out as well, figuring out how time travel works and not how time travel works because obviously it doesn't yet, but trying to figure out how it's going to work in my series and having it so that, because although it is science fiction, having it so that it was not too heavy sci-fi, so that if you're not a sci-fi fan, you can still ride along with the characters and get caught up in the romance and the passion of what's going on between Landry and Jade. And Delaney and Ilsa. Is it Ilsa? I think it's Ilsa. So that was a lot of fun, yeah.
Ali, which of yours is the most fun to write and why?
Actually, the 2 series, the Call series, which is about a detective in New Orleans, set Savoie, and she falls in love with a restaurateur, and obviously the Devil series. They're fun to write because, like I said, I get to kill a lot of people. But when I wrote the first Calling the Dead, it was first really true mystery that I had written, and I tried my hand at it, and it was kind of interesting because I sent it to my betas, and they said they had figured it out like in the 3rd chapter, which I'm like, that's not good. And then we got to the end, and they were like, oh, yeah, no, I didn't see that coming. But writing a serial killer was actually kind of a lot of fun. It was a lot of research went into that. But in the end, that was one of my favorite characters I've ever written, was the serial killer. And then in the second book, it's kind of the same kind of killings. It's a different killer, obviously. But again, those dark sides, I don't know what that says about me, but those were kind of fun to write. And the Kane Casey series, like I said, obviously, since we're on book 8, I'm still having a lot of fun reading those. So I appreciate everybody who keeps reading them.
Carsen?
Well, I guess my favorite is always going to be the latest one. So, shameless plug for Drawn, which it just came out, and it actually is. I did have a lot of fun writing it. It's a true murder mystery, and wrapped in a romance, like I said earlier. And I had fun writing it because I knew all along who the killer was going to be from the beginning, and it was fun building that mystery to try and keep it from the reader. And I think I did a good job with that, but it also allowed me to examine some issues that I found in my career as a criminal defense attorney that were very prominent about, I always get asked, how do you know if someone's guilty or not? And the truth is, you usually don't, unless there's a videotape or, it's very difficult to parse that out. And so the characters face that issue in a way that's completely unrelated to the murder mystery. And so there's several plot lines woven in there that allowed me to explore a lot of different legal issues, and still have fun with a romance and murder mystery. So I got to do all my favorite things.
Ad?
Is that me?
Yeah.
The Midnight Hunters series is the most fun I've had writing anything. I've just recently written a 2-part novella series, The Rogue Hunt, which came out last year, and Enchanted Hunt, which will be out in September. And I get to write lots of action scenes. I get to write magic. I get to write fairies. I get to write monsters that drop out of the sky. And there is a lot of choreography of the action scenes going on there, except now they're usually wolves. So that's even more fun, trying to choreograph that. So that's definitely what I have a lot of fun writing.
And Ileandra, I know you only had one book published, but
yeah, I'm the little baby. It's all right, I'll catch up.
Yeah.
I've had a lot of fun writing these books, and I've kind of, in my head, I know where I'm going to take it all, and I know where I'm going to finish off Danica and Rain's at Lark. So that's a lot of fun in of itself. But what's also fun is planning new stuff. So, there's stuff that I haven't pitched yet or haven't properly set out in my head, but playing about with new ideas is a lot of fun as well. So I guess, yes, I'm having fun working with the Spear Mission files, and there's a lot of running space within the world I've created. So even when Danica and Rain have had their run, I'll still be able to write other characters and other shenanigans within that world. But stepping away from that world, I'm itching to start on the high fantasy idea I've been sitting on for about a year and a half, but I can't do that until I finish up with the Spear Mission file. So, part of the fun for me is finishing up what I have so I can start on something new. Because I do have a bit of butterfly syndrome, ooh, what's this? Ooh, 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 ooh. Yeah, and kind of.
Oh, look, a bunny.
Yes, tiny. But reining that in is really hard. So it requires a level of discipline, which I'm developing. I won't say I have it yet because I don't, but I'm figuring it out as I go. But right now, I'm enjoying Spear Mission files and playing about with Danica, playing about with Rain, and the ensemble of characters around them. Because actually, my secondary characters are a lot of fun to write as well.
okay, because I think we're coming towards the end of time, so it's pretty much the last question of what murder and mayhem do you have coming up coming up for us next, however long it's going to take to receive it. And I think you pretty much answered that. So Robyn, what have you coming up next for murder and mayhem and passion?
I'm working on one called Dead Pretty, which is basically about a mortician, the people that make dead bodies beautiful again, about a celebrity mortician that was on a reality TV show, and that comes to an end and she goes back to her hometown, and then a serial killer in that hometown and a homicide cop on the trail of that killer, and how those two stories interweave. So that's kind of where your romance comes in. And then the serial killer gets on track for the mortician, because she starts to make the victims of the serial killer beautiful again, whereas the serial killer is making art of their work. So that puts the mortician in danger.
Ali?
In February, The Devil Incarnate will hit. I have a couple other ones, but they're romantic books. And I just started working on kind of a true adventure book, treasure hunt kind of thing. But The Devil Incarnate, I think, is the one that a lot of people are waiting for. So it just went to edits. So, Robyn, you won't see Victoria for a while.
She works right next door to me, right next to me in the office. So
I sent her the character key. She wanted the character key, and it's 5 pages long. I got quite the interesting email back. But that one hits in February.
Radclyffe?
Treacherous Seas, which is number something in the Provincetown Tales, and I don't remember what, 9 or 10 perhaps, will be out in November. And there will be some suspense and danger elements in that, but it is a part of the series with a new standalone romance in it as well.
Okay. And Carsen?
So as far as danger, next February I'll have out Spirit of the Law. Psychic will be working with a prosecutor to solve a murder mystery, and they might fall in love.
Okay. Well, it's we've got time's coming to an end. So books are on sale. There should be messages flashing up. We've got a 10-minute wee break between now and the next panel, which is going to be awesome. So I'd like to thank all my panelists for being here and putting up with me, and for all the people who've been sending in questions and listening. It's really awesome to know that you're out there, even if we can't see you. It'll be even more awesome next year when we can have the Knots Festival properly and you can all come and see us in the flesh. And we won't be able to run away from you quite so easily. You can kind of book us into the corner, and we'll sign books and things. And we actually hold books. It's going to be wonderful. So thank you all again. Goodbye.
Thanks, Jane.
Thanks, Jane. Thanks, everybody.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.